Okay, hello and welcome to the latest Lemongrass Live. Today we are looking at guiding SAP journeys, some lessons learned and strategies for Rise with SAP success. I'm Ian. I've spent over 25 years leading large, complex IT transformational programs within the technology services sector, and I'll be your host for today. I'm joined by two incredible colleagues who've been in the trenches of SAP transformation for years. We're kind of here because the SAP landscape has fundamentally shifted. Organizations worldwide are grappling with the move to RISE, navigating cloud operations, and trying to unlock the innovation potential of BTP. All of this while still trying to keep the business running. The challenge isn't just technical anymore, it's strategic, it's operational, and it's deeply human. What makes today's conversation unique is that we're not just sharing best practices, we're kind of exposing our battle scars. The lessons we'll discuss today come from real client experiences, early mistakes that's taught us everything, and the methodologies we've built to help organizations avoid the pitfalls that we've learned about the hard way. So firstly, let me introduce my colleagues. David, you've been involved with SAP for many years. Give us a bit of history of your journey.
Oh, thanks, Ian. Yeah, I've been working with SAP Cloud implementations for the past 6 years or so, and I can say I've probably seen it all, from those early days when we were all learning what cloud native really meant to today, where we have proven methodologies. I've guided over 40 organizations through their cloud operations journey, from manufacturing giants to healthcare systems. And what I've learned is that success isn't about moving to the cloud. It's about reimagining how your organization operates within it.
Thanks, David. And Andrew, you're our global advisory lead. Give us a bit of an insight into your background.
Sure. I've been focused on SAP and data innovation and IT in general for the past 20 plus years, working with clients who want to go beyond basic migration to real transformation. I've helped organizations automate processes that used to take weeks, built real-time analytics that drive immediate business decisions, and designed integrated architectures that turn SAP into a true innovation platform. My passion is showing clients what becomes possible when you think beyond just moving systems to actually transforming capabilities.
Thank you, Andrew. So together we represent hundreds of SAP and indeed lots of non-SAP transformation experiences, from the early days of learning by doing to today's structured advisory-led approaches. So in the next 25 minutes, we're going to share what enterprises wish they'd known before starting their SAP journey. We'll be brutally honest about the challenges, the surprises, and the mistakes we've seen, because learning from other people's experiences is generally far less painful than learning from your own. If you're preparing for RISE with SAP, you'll learn how to avoid the timeline traps and the data disasters that caught early adopters off guard. If you're already operating in the cloud, you'll discover how to optimize your operations and avoid the performance pitfalls we've seen. And if you're ready to harness BTP for innovation, you'll hear how to build transformation capabilities from day one instead of trying to retrofit them in later. So this isn't just theory, it's really hard-won wisdom from the field. So let's jump in. The first topic we're going to lead into is preparing for RISE. We've guided dozens of organizations through this preparation phase, and I want to share some lessons learned from the early days before a world where a formalized advisory-led approach existed. One of the biggest misconceptions we used to encounter was timeline optimism. A few years back, we had a retail client who said, come what may, we'll be done by Black Friday. That original timeline was an 8-month timeline. We ended up at 14 months. The technical migration went really smoothly, but getting 3,000 storefront managers comfortable with the new processes, that's where we learned the real work really happens.
Yeah, Ian, I remember those days too. Back then, companies thought the RISE journey, now cloud ERP, was like moving to a bigger office, same furniture, just a different address. So I had a manufacturing client who discovered that they had 47 different ways of creating purchase orders across their divisions. In the cloud, you couldn't just patch those inconsistencies anymore. That painful experience taught us why we needed a more structured approach.
Clients only undertake these types of transformations roughly once in a decade or so, and it isn't really part of their core set of skills for most companies. So understanding the impact of the changes on the business of IT as well as the business processes is really key to managing that change. When clients ask, what have we signed up to? It's probably asking the question a little too late and requires unplanned effort to remediate the blind spots later. From an operations perspective, if you currently have a service provider for your basis in IT activities, you're likely going to need their services beyond the standard ones that SAP offer. So working with new tools and processes, it takes time, and having a link to the past during this transformation is often very valuable.
Yeah, those early challenges taught us that a proper advisory engagement methodology catches these issues up front, or at least states them up front. Now that same type of company gets a more comprehensive current state assessment as part of our advisory process. They're preparing for the organisational change while we're looking at their migration strategy. No more nasty surprises, no more emergency remediations throughout the programme.
Yeah, the transformation has been incredible. I think that manufacturing client I mentioned with the 47 different purchase order processes, now we identify process inconsistencies during our business process mapping phase in advisory. We standardize processes before migration, not after. So it's really night and day.
Yeah, thanks, David. What other preparation challenges did we used to face?
Yeah, testing was back then was a nightmare. Everyone tested in their sandbox, but nobody understood how the cloud behaved differently. Network latency, user load patterns, integration timeouts, for example, all different. So I had a client where their reporting queries ran in, about 2 minutes on premise, but suddenly it took 15 minutes in the cloud. So we were scrambling around to fix those performance issues post go live.
For me, it was security governance. That was another sort of blind spot in the early days. I remember a CISO who wasn't fully engaged during the sales and the scoping process for a move to cloud ERP. And they found out that all of their established tools and processes they had in place to manage the security risks were simply not applicable or available in RISE, at least not in the way that they were used to having them. So there were many education sessions and process adjustments to get the controls up to a level that they were comfortable with again. We had to do all that prior to go live.
Yeah, those painful lessons kind of shaped our advisory methodology. So now in engagements, we look at cloud testing environments early and help clients understand performance patterns before they commit to those go live dates. We also map out the compliance requirements and suggest any governance frameworks that might be useful as part of my migration plan right from day one.
Yeah, the difference is remarkable. I think our recent clients don't experience those performance surprises because we've already modeled their workloads in the cloud environments and optimized their processes during the advisory.
And our governance frameworks are built into the migration plans now, so they're not bolted on afterwards, and we've eliminated those compliance delays entirely.
Excellent. For me, change management was where we learned some of our hardest lessons. I remember a logistics company, brilliant technical team with a solid infrastructure plan, but their warehouse supervisors, for some reason, weren't involved in the planning. Go live day arrived, and the supervisors were basically staging a revolt because nobody explained how their daily routines would change so much. We had to roll back and spend weeks doing emergency change management triage.
Yes, that was a turning point. I think now stakeholder analysis and change management planning are core components of our advisory engagement. We identify key influences like those supervisors from day one and involve them throughout the process.
The results sort of speak for themselves. Our clients who invest in building out thorough change management plans and execute on them have smoother go lives because everyone knows what's coming and feels prepared for all the changes.
All sounds pretty good. Good advice to companies. But if you could give a piece of advice to someone just starting their RISE journey today, what would that be, David?
Yeah, well, I think invest in advisory engagement up front. In the past, I used to tell clients to build their cloud operations team before go live, but some would scramble at the last minute. I remember one retail client who ended up paying premium rates for contractors because they waited too long. So now our advisory engagement includes resource planning and skills development from the start.
I'd like clients to think of the move to cloud ERP as the beginning of an innovation journey, not the end. So in our early projects, clients would treat the migrations as the finish line. And now in the planning phase, we're exploring and agreeing their BTP and data and integration roadmaps for the next 3 years before they even migrate. And the companies that take this approach are better able to communicate and quantify the benefits of the transformation, not just the system changes.
Yeah, true. I always tell today's clients, your people's daily lives are going to change, and we need to plan for that. Our advisory engagement maps out the current roles, identifies any changes required, and builds transformation plans with the human element as well. It's completely different from those early days where we were just really moving systems. Well, thanks for that, chaps. Starting the RISE journey is very important. Let's assume we've made it to the cloud. Let's talk about operating in the cloud. David, in your history, what were the biggest surprises in those early cloud implementations?
Yeah, I think the shared responsibility model was a shock in the early days. I remember the healthcare client who got a call from SAP asking, why they hadn't scheduled security patches. The client assumed that this was all taken care of by SAP. The client, were used to their managed service provider proactively arranging important security tasks. However, no one had looked at the responsibility matrix, I would say, in enough detail, which states that checking the patch status and creating a service request and validating that in the system after the patch completion are to be performed by the customer team.
I'd say that performance tuning caught some clients off guard initially. So relearning how to tune the system in conjunction with SAP and without direct access to the infrastructure or the database tools they were familiar with, that was a change for some. It resulted in a steep learning curve for a lot of basis teams, and they had to change their mindset to use more of the application and transaction monitoring telemetry that is actually available in cloud ERP.
Okay. Yeah, again, those early operational challenges taught us exactly what to include in our advisory engagements. Now we map out the new support operating model, look at skills gaps, and we have hypercare incident response procedures ready before go live. Our recent clients don't experience those 2 a.m. panic calls because the teams know exactly how to handle cloud ops before we even get there.
Yeah, the transformation I think has been amazing. We include cloud performance modeling in our advisory engagement. We simulate workloads and identify scheduling conflicts before they become production problems. Clients go live with, I would say, optimized processes, not reactive fixes.
And so we design the operational readiness as part of the advisory engagements. So recent clients have their monitoring strategies, incident response procedures, the team training all completed before the migration, and they're confident right from day one.
Yeah, and how about user experience expectations? That was another area where we learned some pretty hard lessons in the past.
I remember there was a professional services client where they kept asking, why can't this work like my iPhone? And so when Fiori was launched, the Fiori version felt much more modern, and so people expected everything to be quite intuitive. And suddenly the business processes that were fine in ECC now felt quite clunky. So they ended up redesigning half their workflows post-implementation.
The skills evolution was jarring back then. I think I had a basis team who were proficient at managing PO integrations, but as part of our cloud ERP, the move to integration suite means they had to learn API management, cloud security protocols, and automation deployment tools. It was a stressful time for everyone.
Yeah, now IT service design again is built into our advisory engagement. We don't just migrate processes, we try to reimagine them for the cloud environment. And our skills assessment and development planning mean existing staff are ready for their new roles before the migration even starts.
That really does make a big difference. Our recent clients, they have very user-friendly processes from day one because we help design them that way during the engagement. So there's no, or at least far less, post-implementation retrofitting.
Yeah, and our skills development programs mean SAP admins transition smoothly from technicians to system architects. They're excited about their expanded roles instead of stressed about the new responsibilities.
Yeah, all great, and accepting new ways of working is great. But the flip side of that, what operational practices did we learn that organisations really need to abandon?
Well, I mean, lower level tasks, OSTB checks, adding swap space, areas like that. They don't manage infrastructure. They are managing a supplier to agreed service levels. And whilst their skills are beneficial, of course, to understand that and working through and solving issues, the mindset needs to be focused on service management and outcomes in the partnership with the provider.
I think there's a few things that companies can do even right now, right? So one thing is to stop developers from creating new ABAP custom code in response to business requirements, or start using more clean core friendly customizations in BTP extensions or in ABAP Cloud. So create the customizations where they're not going to go in and do things like accumulate technical debt, right? Because customizations fundamentally add technical debt that needs to be managed, and it definitely increases the testing requirements anytime you do an SAP update, because they can have an adverse impact on those customizations.
Excellent. And these experiences shaped our operational readiness planning in the advisory engagements. So now we outline cloud native operational procedures before migration. Our recent clients have automated monitoring strategies and cloud friendly customization approaches from day one. But we're constantly learning and adapting, and see that there's still some common misconceptions around what responsibilities customers have in the cloud and how SAP describes some of their service levels.
Yes, the architecture of the system is entirely governed by SAP in the form of service levels, where most customers have become highly competent at building solutions using individual cloud elements that they get to specify in design documentation. So what we find is that it's helpful to translate from the service level offering back into the architectural pattern that more technically minded people can relate to. For example, what services would provide for automated cross-regional failover rather than in-region automated failover?
I think also the service levels, when clients begin to do their comparisons, they look at the cloud native solutions and what SAP is offering. And when they look at the uptime specifically, they're not really looking at the same thing. So the cloud provider, they only specify the infrastructure without any reference to the application which runs on top of it. And SAP is, inherently responsible for the infrastructure as well as the application. And so their levels reflect this. So it isn't as fair or apples to apples comparison as it could be. And from our experience, and based on the statistics that SAP publishes, they have always, exceeded their posted uptimes.
Thank you. So that's, again, the power of proper upfront engagement. It clarifies the operational changes necessary to make the transition to Cloud ERP a really positive experience for the client. Our clients today don't experience those early painful lessons that we used to see. So due to time constraints, that brings us to the end of our discussion. I think the key message is clear. The structured advisory engagement approach we've developed from years of experience transforms SAP journeys from slightly risky migrations into strategic advantages. So thanks, David, and thanks, Andrew, for sharing how far we've come. So just to wrap up, let's crystallize the three most important lessons we've learned from years of SAP transformations. First, invest in advisory engagement up front. Every painful story we shared today, the timeline disasters, the performance surprises, the compliance delays, these all happened because organizations tried to figure things out along the way as they went. The companies that succeed today get comprehensive current state assessments, process mapping, and operational readiness planning before they migrate. It's the difference between reactive problem solving and proactive transformation.
Yeah, I would say second, embrace the cloud operating model from day one. The shared responsibility model, cloud native monitoring, automated operations. These aren't just technical changes. They're fundamental shifts in how the organization thinks about SAP. The companies that thrive in the cloud don't just move their old processes. I would say that they embrace it in the sense that the companies thrive in that cloud, and they imagine the processes for cloud native operations as well.
And third, I'd make sure that companies are thinking, beyond just the migration and all the way to transformation. So the organizations that are seeing the biggest return from their SAP investments aren't just running their old business processes in the cloud. They are taking advantage of some of the new technologies. They're taking advantage of BTP to build new capabilities they never had before. There are some real advantages to some of the real-time decision-making tools. It is possible to go and automate a lot of these processes, and some predictive analytics are really changing the narrative. So these are becoming competitive advantages for when companies are planning for them from the beginning, not looking at them afterwards.
Excellent. Just before we go, there's a couple of questions that we get fairly consistently. First question is always, how long does a typical RISE migration really take?
Yeah, the honest answer is that it depends on the preparation that's there and how much you're actually moving. But it's kind of a rough average. Organizations that really do a lot of the thinking before they start, perhaps go and engage in a specialist advisory company. To do that, they typically can see a 12 to 18 month timeline with smooth go lives. The ones that don't, where we've come in a little bit later in the process, or they've engaged others a little bit later in the process, usually these are the ones that are sitting in the 18 to 24 month category. And there's usually quite a number of things which kind of get fixed post implementation.
So planning's the key. Excellent. And second question is, as we're all opening our kimonos to our mistakes today, second question is, what's the biggest mistake organizations typically make?
I think it's treating the RISE journey as a technology project instead of a business transformation. Companies that succeed, involve business leaders from day one, plan for change management, and design their future state, not just migrate their current state.
Thanks, David. Thank you, Andrew. Thanks to everybody for listening. If today's discussion has resonated with you, here's what we recommend as your next steps. First, if you're considering RISE with SAP, start with a comprehensive current state assessment. Don't wait until you're in the middle of a migration to discover data quality issues or process inconsistencies. Second, if you're already in the cloud but struggling with operations, consider an operational readiness review. Many organizations can significantly improve their cloud performance with the right monitoring strategies and operational processes. And finally, if you're ready to harness BTP for innovation, start with business problem identification, not your technical capabilities. The most successful BTP implementations solve specific business challenges and then scale from there. So thanks again for joining us today. And remember, your SAP journey doesn't have to be a solo adventure. Learn from our experiences and our pain and transform your organization with confidence. Please feel free to reach out to us via the email address or the QR code shown below.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you. And looking forward to hearing about your transformation success stories.